as promised by President Trump before his historic win, the Trump administration has been fulfilling its promise of mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. This phenomenon has impacted countries all over the world. The Caribbean has not been immune to this policy and its impacts. With the return of undocumented immigrants to their homelands, including Caribbean countries, profound effects are anticipated. These effects include economic, social structures, and national security concerns. This phenomenon will create numerous challenges for these already strained economic and social systems in the Caribbean. Let us explore some of these challenges. Many Caribbean countries are already straining to provide adequate resources for the residents in these countries, and often they rely on remittances from residents in the diaspora, including the United States of America. This body of residents in the diaspora includes both legal and undocumented persons. Remittances constitute a portion of these countries' gross domestic product. A decline in remittances due to the mass deportation policy will potentially cause additional strain on these Caribbean economies. Deported people are often significant breadwinners for their families back home. Therefore, deportation takes away their ability to provide for their families and can potentially cause them to become dependent on their families who were dependent on them while abroad. Integrating into the Caribbean countries' workforce tends to be difficult for deportees, as they may either be over or underqualified for the Caribbean countries' workforce. Some individuals, particularly those deported due to criminal records, face stigma and are often denied employment opportunities, further straining the local economy. Families are often disrupted, both in the diaspora and Caribbean countries, as often the deportees leave children and other family members behind. Separation can lead to psychological distress, especially for children who may suffer from emotional trauma and financial instability. The unseen emotional challenge, if not addressed adequately, can lead to more complex problems. Adjusting to life in the deportees' home countries can be particularly challenging. Many left their countries at an early age and have little or no familiarity with local customs, language variations, or job markets, except for what they may have seen on social media. The stigma associated with deportation in the Caribbean can further lead to alienation from society, thereby making reintegration challenging. National security concerns. Another significant impact of mass deportation is the effect on crime and national security. There are deportees, particularly those expelled for criminal offenses, who return to their home countries with few options for legal employment. This often leads to an increase in gang activity and organized crime, as deportees may turn to similar illicit activities which they left behind for survival. Caribbean nations such as Jamaica and the Bahamas have reported a correlation between crime rates and the influx of deportees from the US even prior to the Trump administration's new mass deportation phenomenon. The return of gang-affiliated individuals can also introduce new criminal networks, destabilizing communities, and overwhelming local law enforcement agencies that may already be burdened due to financial resources and human capital. In some of these Caribbean countries, locals are bracing for things to get worse in terms of crime. The call to return home. Caribbean leaders are salvaging their pride by encouraging their citizens who find themselves in this situation to return home. The Prime Minister of Jamaica is one such leader who has encouraged his citizens to come home because they are not homeless. This sounds good, but can he truly guarantee they won't be homeless upon return from the United States? What infrastructure, economic, and social policy changes are these countries making to adequately prepare for this potential influx of deportees? Are they taking measures to ensure the safety of the locals as well as the deportees? Are they establishing rehabilitation programs for those who were serving time in U.S. prisons? How about those with mental health or other health issues? Are there adequate resources to effectively care for these people returning home as deportees? There is an urgent need for both the U.S. and Caribbean governments to work together to create policies that address the root causes of forced migration and mitigate the negative effects of deportation. More investment in economic development, social services, and national security are at the top of the list. The recent changes being made to the USAID program complicates matters even further for these Caribbean countries. The Trump administration's mass deportation of Caribbean nationals from the U.S. will have far-reaching consequences for their home countries. From economic strain to social fragmentation and increased crime, these deportations will place significant burdens on already struggling nations. To address these challenges, there must be greater collaboration between the U.S. and Caribbean governments, along with investment in sustainable reintegration programs that ensure deportees can contribute positively to their nations rather than being marginalized as unworthy elements of society. Failure to consider and establish adequate solutions can potentially result in the cycle of poverty, crime, and migration to continue exacerbating the same problems which these Trump administration policies seek to address. Thank you for watching, and please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel.